Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Nicole Amarteifio's short film, Baby Something. This is an interesting short film, in part because it was written by Amarteifio, directed by Amarteifio, and she is the star of it. So this is really a sort of in-house project in a very serious way. There's also the baby, whose name I didn't look back up. I also typically don't. I wouldn't say the name of a child actor or baby actor or anything. Anyway, I don't feel like that's not a thing that I'm going to do. But it is primarily Amarteifio, the character that she plays, who is a new mother, Ghanaian mother, ethnically Ghanaian in I believe in Ghana, and her husband, who's sort of peripherally on screen, right? We never sort of fully see him, but we see him hovering around the edges of many of the shots. And he is Indian Ghanaian, so he is a much lighter-skinned Indian man, whereas she's a darker-skinned sub-Saharan African woman, and their baby is much lighter-skinned. The baby looks more Indian than she looks sub-Saharan African. And so this becomes one of the sort of crises of the film, right? Is because we do overhear a phone conversation between the husband and presumably his mother, in which she asks whether the baby is light or dark-skinned. And Amarteifio's character is trying not to sort of be concerned about the way that the baby looks, right? The presentation, the racial presentation of her child. But she is clearly sort of bothered about this, and we see bits and pieces that sort of indicate her anxieties about this. And at the end of the film, she does directly address her daughter and sort of say, I had wanted to raise you like me as a strong black woman. And the really sort of nice moment of that conclusion of the film is that it's not left at that, right? It's not, I had wanted to raise you as a strong black woman, but I cannot because you are white presenting. It is, I had wanted to raise you this way, and you are, because you are my daughter, you are my child, and so if anyone ever says to you that you are not black, you can assert that you are. You can stand up for that identity and claim that identity and have that be quite true. And so I think that's an interesting and important take on this, right? That identity is not, that identity, that race, ethnicity is not just what we look like, but it is about who we are, how we conceptualize ourselves, and the cultural spaces in which our identities are formed, right? Now, of course, that is not to say that race is completely disconnected from our heritages, etc., etc. I have no African heritage, as far as I am aware. If I were to claim to be black, that would be problematic, because I would be sort of usurping a heritage to which I have no legitimate claim. But in this instance, this is a baby who presents quite white, who visually looks white, or at least sort of very light-skinned Indian, but is half sub-Saharan African, right? And so there's that sort of element of it's this sort of, and this is a tricky thing about race, right? Is we have a balancing act between sort of what is in us, who we are, versus how we are raised, how we are sort of conditioned, etc., etc. And so that's definitely there. But for me, I actually think this was the less interesting of what I would call the two major themes of this short film. And the other is sort of the difficulty of motherhood. Amarteifio's character I wouldn't say she necessarily has postpartum depression, but I wouldn't say she doesn't. It's slightly unclear whether this is postpartum depression as such, which is, as far as I know, is actually sort of a diagnosable condition, or whether this is more struggling with stress and anxiety. And that seems to be driven by a couple of major issues. One, of course, is the racial concerns, especially with Amarteifio's character having overheard the conversation between her husband and his mother, and knowing that that is on the in-laws' radar. But there's other elements as well. The fact that the baby cries all night and keeps her up. That, of course, is incredibly difficult. I mean, I don't have kids. I've never had kids keep me up, but my cat does scream in the middle of the night and wakes me up periodically. And so, of course, you're having your sleep cycle interrupted. You're not able to get extended periods of sleep, which means your body is not sort of resting and recuperating. And to be sort of kept up all night and then have to sort of sleep during the day or make up that sleep in shorter bursts really does wear you down, because that's not really the way that we are sort of biologically meant to function typically. So there's that element of it. The other big element is that breastfeeding seems incredibly painful for her. Like, I don't know that I don't know this for sure. I don't know that much about it. I don't know that breastfeeding is ever pleasant necessarily, but it seems to create substantial physical pain. What seems to be, I would guess, much more than a normal amount of physical discomfort that comes with breastfeeding. And when Amarteifio's character switches over to a breast pump in the hopes that that will ease the problem, it does not seem to. But it does create a sort of gap between Amarteifio's character and her baby, because I think for a lot of people, breastfeeding is a very intimate act. It's a very personal connection between a mother and a child, and it becomes this way of sort of building an emotional connection and a bridge with that child. And so, and Amarteifio's character does say to her husband something to the effect of, well, even though I didn't want to, we're going to become a breast pump household. And I think that is, without the film sort of making it explicit, I think that is something that the character was reluctant to do because she wanted to build that connection with that baby and to feel very strongly those bonds of identification. And that's sort of reinforced by the idea at the end of the film, I'd wanted to raise you as a strong black woman, just like me. That sort of sense of trying to form those foundational links of identity, of emotional connection, of even sort of physical connection, I think is really quite central to the film. And the ways in which those connections are lost or compromised or severed seems very much seems more painful on an emotional level than the physical pain of breastfeeding for Amarteifio's character. And so it's an interesting film in that way, in that it's sort of with very, very little dialogue. It sort of explores the pain of this mother, but also the great sort of joy of the realization or the revelation at the end of this short film that it does not, in fact, matter if the baby is not precisely what she had envisioned, right? If it does not present, if this child does not present as a dark-skinned person, if there is that sort of mediated gap of not directly breastfeeding, etc., etc., it doesn't matter, because the truth of their relationship is that they have those emotional connections. They have those. They have or can build those links that are so important for this character in terms of defining the relationship with her child.